I've seen this perfect picture in my head, and after driving all night, now here it is. I can finally feel the sun kissing my skin, and I just wanna take it in. Yeah, I just wanna take it in. Breathe it in and out. This is what it's all about. These are the moments we live for. Once in a lifetime, everything we want and more. This is the start of a new day, the good life. Ooh, these are the moments we live for.
Good morning. How are we doing this morning? There is some sound. Good. We are so excited to have you join us for our FPEA Florida Homeschool 2025 convention. Beautiful things will happen here this weekend. And we are so excited that you are here to be with us. We've got some wonderful speakers this morning. We've got a lot going on the rest of the day, and we're going to get started because we can only get that going and happening for you if we stay on time here. So I would like to start by saying I am Suzanne Nunn, chairman of the board for FPEA. And at FPEA, thank you, just in case you don't know that, but for FPEA, we are not able to do what we do here without our sponsors. And our sponsors believe in what we're doing, our vision for homeschooling. Our sponsors partner with us and support us, and we can do great things because of them. And this morning, our sponsor, our platinum sponsor for the weekend, actually is the U.S. Navy. And representing, thank you, yeah. Representing the U.S. Navy this morning is Rear Admiral Jim Waters. He graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1989 and completed graduate studies at Oxford University in 1991. He served as the commanding officer of the USS Virginia and subsequently commanded Submarine Squadron 4 and Submarine Group 2. He currently serves as Commander, Navy Recruiting Command, where he has proudly led Recruiting Nation to mission success in 2024 and is on track for mission success again in 2025. Rear Admiral Waters and his wife Terry have 4 adult children and 10 grandchildren, with number 11 on the way soon. Most importantly, he is a proud homeschool father. Please help me welcome Rear Admiral Jim Waters.
Well, good morning. This is amazing. I have, as Suzanne said, I'm a homeschool dad from 1998 to 2019. Been to several homeschool conventions, but never one like this. This is ginormous. I congratulate you on what you've built here. It's truly amazing. And it is a pleasure to be here today to stand before families, students, and educators who believe in the power of independent learning, strength of character, and the freedom to raise the next generation with purpose and conviction. So as Suzanne said, my wife and I homeschooled our children from start to finish. It's been a few years, but being here brings it all back. I remember the early mornings at the kitchen table with math struggles, the history deep dives, and yes, part of my particular skill, the science experiments, and some of those didn't go quite right. And we did learn that eyebrows do grow back. So when I look out here today, I see younger versions and peers of my wife and I. I see parents doing hard, meaningful work of shaping minds and hearts. I see students learning how to think critically, lead with integrity, and stand firm in a world that doesn't always celebrate conviction. We raised our children in the Waters household with many of the same values that bring you here today: integrity, responsibility, love of country, and like many of you, a deep Christian faith that brings a heart for service to family, to community, to church, and to things greater than ourselves. And those values endure. Today, our children, our 4 children, are thriving. Our 2 boys chose to serve our country. One is in the Navy, one is in the Air Force. Our oldest daughter decided to raise a family. She has 5 of our 10 grandchildren. And our youngest is just finished up her 2nd year of law school at Regent University. So watching them take those steps has been some of the proudest moments of my life. They were ready, not just academically, but morally and spiritually, to serve, to lead, and to give back. And that's what I want to talk about today: service. We in Navy recruiting often speak about careers, benefits, and adventure. Yes, the GI Bill, healthcare benefits, service, all of those things are real and important. But homeschool families often understand something deeper: the call to serve. Service is about contributing to something bigger than yourself. It's about protecting your community and your country and your way of life. It's about defending the freedoms that allow all of us to educate our children according to our values. When a young person chooses military service, they carry forward the principles they were raised with, and then they grow. They gain not just skills, but a clear sense of purpose and mature resilience. In the Navy, we see that growth every day. We offer over 80 career fields, both as officers and enlisted, from the seabed to space, and from the intellectual to the kinetic, including cybersecurity, nuclear engineering, aviation, medicine, robotics, and logistics. But what sets us apart is not just what we do, it's who we are. When you raise your right hand, you don't just join a team, you join a purpose. In the Navy, we call each other shipmate. We serve not only to defend our country, but to preserve the freedoms that make this nation strong, including the freedom to homeschool. I know some of you may have concerns about military service, about safety, about culture, and maybe even long-term impacts. I would expect nothing less of this group. Curiosity rules here. Here's what I've seen, not just as a military leader, but as a homeschool dad of military leaders. The military doesn't diminish who our kids are. It shapes them into better versions of themselves. It builds confidence, resilience, and leadership that stays with them for life, whether they continue in service, go to college, start a business, and raise a family. Now, the world is out there. Our children will be immersed in it one day. Doing so within the structure and discipline of the military has helped my sons become the mature, resilient young men in that world today. To the families here, I see your dedication, the late nights, the hard decisions, the deep care. What you're doing matters. And my Navy shipmates and I are proud to stand alongside families like yours, raising the next generation of leaders. To the students, your journey doesn't have to follow a script. If you're looking for a challenge, for purpose, for a way to make a difference, consider the Navy. It's not just about the uniform. It's about mission. It's about growth. And it's about answering a call. And I'll close with this. Our nation needs young men and women of character, people willing to stand for what is right and serve with honor. If that speaks to you, I invite you to meet our sailors here today at this event. You'll see them in the hall later. Ask them questions. hear their stories, you might discover something meaningful, maybe even something life direction changing. Thank you for the honor of being with you here today. It's certainly an honor to sponsor this event. And may God bless your families, your homeschooling journey, and this great country we're privileged to serve. Thank you.
So again, I just want to say thank you to the U.S. Navy and their support of homeschooling families this weekend. That is very important to us. Please stop by their booth and visit with them. I would like to now introduce the rest of our board. I have Tracy Pons, our secretary, and Larry Wang, our treasurer. And Larry is going to open us in a word of prayer this morning.
Good morning. If we would all stand in reverence of the word and the prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts, thankful for the freedoms we have, especially here in Florida, to educate our children. The opportunity to gather together in this space as families, educators, and advocates of home education. Lord, we ask for your guidance throughout this conference. May every word spoken, every session attended, every connection made be guided by your wisdom and rooted in your truth. Grant us clarity in our decisions, discernments in our paths, and unify our purpose. We pray your special blessings over each attendee, that they would be encouraged, strengthened, and renewed in their call. Member of the staff, may they serve with joy, speak with grace, and blessing others through their gifts and efforts. Thank you for the community you've built here. May this time together glorify you and equip us to better serve our families and this generation of learners. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, so I thank our board. We do a lot of work, making a lot of fun decisions along the way, and sometimes hard ones. But this is where we all end up. So I thank Larry and Tracy for serving alongside of me. But you know, one of the things that we're so thrilled about as we serve is that we live in Florida. And Florida is an amazing state to homeschool in. Is that correct? Yeah? And that happens a lot because of a lot of the things that are happening behind the scenes legislatively. And over the past several years, we've been really, truly blessed to have a governor that is so pro-school choice and giving us our options. Yep. And he has seen to it that our rights to homeschool freely have been protected under his watch. So would you all please help me welcome the Sunshine State's own and best governor, Governor Ron DeSantis.
Good morning. Thanks so much. Y'all doing good? You look good. Very punchy. Ready to roll. State of Florida. We're proud to be ranked #1 in economy, #1 in education freedom, higher education, all these things. But I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt, we are #1 for homeschooling families of all 50 states by a country mile. And we've been able to work with folks, particularly in the past in the legislature, to deliver really significant reforms that recognizes one simple fact. Parents have the fundamental right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. And that's something that is a principle that applies to a whole host of different issues that we see. For example, it applies to our enactment of universal school choice. The idea is parents have a right to direct the education. As a society, we believe in education and want to provide that for people, but ultimately it's not about bureaucracies that are existing or that were created years ago. It's not about the system, it's about the students, and that money should follow the students. And so if you want to go to your local school in the school district, that's what I did going to Dunedin High School, great. If you want to go to a different school in your school district in Florida, most of these districts are now offering those choice. If you want to go to a charter school, you don't have a better state in the country for that. You have all these great options for charter schools. And if you want to take a scholarship and go to a private school, you should be able to do that regardless of your income. But if you choose to homeschool, we also recognize, you're paying the same taxes that everybody else is paying, and you ought to have that money follow your student, even as a homeschool family. So that's first thing. The second thing is we've had some battles in Florida over the years on what role parents play in the education of our children, particularly with things like curriculum. And I took a position that was met with a lot of hostility by the left and by legacy media. You even had a lot of weak Republicans that weren't willing to stand with me back then. But basically I said, in the state of Florida, as a parent, you have a right to send your kid to school without having the teacher tell them that they can change their gender or that they were born in the wrong body. That's just the way it is. So there's a lot of people that didn't like that, but we had legislation that basically protected that. And the use of schools to inject toxic ideologies is unacceptable, and it has no place in the state of Florida. So we wanted to provide the protections for parents so that you knew that, education is about the core academic subjects that when we grew up and our parents and grandparents did, trying to put things in with all this basically hard left ideology, that doesn't work. Now, most people, I think, agreed with that. Certainly most parents agreed with it. Not very many people in the media agreed with it. Obviously people on the left. And we even had a company down the road from here who did not agree with that. And so we had to get into the tussle there. But, a lot of people said that because they were the most powerful company in Florida, that when they opposed something, that somehow you just had to wilt and not stand up for what's right. And that may have been true in the past. But that's not how we roll in Florida under my watch. We're going to stand up for what's right. So we did that. We had some battles, and we ended up successfully navigating that issue. But it also was an issue years ago. They're talking now in the Congress about, we must save women's sports. We did that like 5 years ago in Florida, where we said that girls have a right to compete against other girls. I'd have some guy come in and win the championship. How is that fair? And I've got two daughters and a son, and I want them all to have opportunities. And you think about it, these swimmers were training their whole lives to be able to compete in high school and college. And then you got somebody that was on the men's swim team the year before, 2 years before, all of a sudden competing in the women's swim and then wins the championship. That's a total fraud on fair competition. And to allow that to happen was unacceptable. So we were very quick to that fight doing it, because I think parents look at it from a perspective of, why would I teach my daughter, work hard, you can get ahead, if then they do that and they end up having to compete, against somebody that shouldn't even be in the competition to begin with. So, and it's also just, you have to just speak the truth. And you can't just say, I can go from the men's to the women's team, and I was a man before, now I'm a... That's just not true. And we've got to be honest about what's true and what's not true. one of the things, so we've been very much standing with parents about we don't want the nonsense in the classroom. So you have the ability, and if you're in like your kid's in a public school, you can look at the curriculum, and there's stuff that they try to jam in there that is just totally inappropriate. And so we've worked really hard. We're doing even more to make sure that goes. And obviously when you homeschool, you're taking that power solely into your own hands. And a lot of people homeschool because even with great reforms, they want to be the ones that leave the imprint on their kids. I mean, you think about it, you send your kid even to a great school, that's huge numbers of hours of the day that they are being shaped in some ways by people that are not their parents. And that can sometimes be good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're bad, but I know a lot of the parents at homeschool are like, wait a minute, this is my responsibility. We want to make sure we're instilling the appropriate values. We don't want there to be any static in that. We don't want there to be any ambiguity. And what a school may offer may just be a little bit different than what you want to offer. And I think that's something that, a lot of parents have told me over the years, especially as so much of education has just gone off the rails around the country. It's crazy what's happened. You go to like California, oh my gosh, we don't even want to talk about that with education. They've also got some other problems. I mean, I was able to do this debate with the governor of California, I think it was like a year or two ago, and he was trying to argue with a straight face that California had lower taxes than Florida. Now, I don't care if you're the biggest supporter of California. Nobody believes that. They have the highest income tax in the state. We have no income tax. They have, we only rely on sales tax, basically, and they have a higher sales tax than Florida. So you can't make that up. But one of the things that I think we pointed out there is this ideology that we've seen even in the education, and it infects other parts of society. So how they've handled like crime and homelessness has just been totally outrageous. You could go in and steal $999 from a store, and they would say, well, if you don't do 1,000, then there's nothing we can do. Who the hell thinks that makes any sense to do? They've actually, some of those ideas have been percolating in Florida from time to time. There have been folks that want to have that $1,000, $1,300, whatever threshold in the state of Florida, and trust me, I will never let that happen. But what it does, it's created a culture of lawlessness. They've incentivized public drug use and homelessness and all these other things. And so it was the type of thing that I had gone to San Francisco. I think it was like maybe a few months before I did this debate. And I'm walking down the streets, and literally within 5 minutes of me being on the streets, there was somebody defecating on the sidewalk in broad daylight. And I'm like, this is crazy. And sure enough, it was such an epidemic that somebody created an app where anytime people saw this feces on the streets, they could plot it on the map. So if you held up this map with all the dots of where everybody has seen, the entire city of San Francisco, has seen somebody drop some poop on it at some point. So you have that map, and it's just thinking to myself, like, how would that possibly be acceptable? But it's the ideology that goes into it. So this permeates more than just education. We see it, quite frankly, in fighting the ESG and some of the things we fought with corporate America, where they want to jam things like climate ideology in through the economy without your consent, without your participation. And we really, more than anyone, Florida has been responsible for nuking ESG. It's basically dead because of what we've done. So, but I raised this because I think that all this stuff is an outgrowth of failures in education. When you have destructive ideologies that are really ruining lives all across this country, and I know because people that move here and flee those tell me about what goes on in these other states, and they tell me about how they've been managed so poorly and how they've had all these problems. So when you're critiquing some of the stuff that's gone into education recently, I think that we've been on the right side of that 100%. We know what we're against, but you also have an obligation to say what you're for. What do we think education is about? And part of what education is about is, no question, reading, writing, arithmetic, all the core things that are important that people are able to know. And there's a lot of great that comes with that. It empowers you to live a great life, everything like that. But we have a responsibility with education, whether it's you as homeschool parents, whether it's me as governor as I look to what policies and programs to support, whether it's folks that work in school districts or private schools. We have an obligation that this education, whatever form it takes, from homeschooling to traditional public school, that we're doing what we need to do to prepare our students to be citizens of this republic, that they understand the core foundational principles that the United States of America was founded upon, that they have an appreciation about how those principles are reflected in our founding documents and how they've animated key portions in American history all since 1776. And unfortunately, in many parts of this country, that's become a total lost art. There's some places they don't even want to teach about the American Revolution and the creation of the Constitution. And so that's not acceptable in Florida. So we've led a real serious effort to get civics back in the classroom in a major way. We launched the Civics and Debate Initiative. It's now the #1 in America. We host the national championships. But we also recognize we can sit here and say, you got to teach the Declaration of Independence. You got to teach the Constitution. You got to teach about James Madison and Washington. And yes, you do, but you have to have instructors that are really well versed in this and that really have a passion and appreciation for it. And it is just the truth that if you go to most universities in this country and you want to learn about the foundations of America, a lot of times that's pretty hard to do. A lot of these universities are more interested in intellectual fads. They're interested in things like race and gender and ethnicity and focusing history through those lenses rather than giving an accurate assessment of what's going on. Many of these people think that the Founding Fathers should just simply be ignored because, why do they want to study folks like that who were, relatively wealthy and white? And that's the mindset that permeates academia. So I think a lot of it's fallen out of favor over the years, and I think to great consequence to our country, because I think that you look at some of the divisions, we should all have the same foundation about what it means to be an American. When we're going out, when you turn 18, whatever vocation you do, when you're participating in our republic as a citizen, you should be educated in those foundations. You should understand freedom. You should appreciate the sacrifices that people have made. And I think that foundation is really eroded, where there's some people that they're just singing off a different sheet of music. If we have the same foundation and belief in the foundations of our country, it doesn't mean we're going to agree on what tax policy should be. It doesn't mean we're going to agree on every type of policy issue, but it means that we do have common currency and common values. And I think that's probably true for any country. You would need that, but for us, it's definitely true, partially because we're a nation that was founded on a belief which people did not recognize before 1776, that our rights do not come from the government. They're not bestowed on us by a king, but they come directly from God, and that we are endowed by our Creator with these inalienable rights. And that turned the whole concept of government at the time on its head, because at the time it was thought that your rights or privileges were bestowed upon you by the sovereign, usually a king. There was a belief that there was a, quote, divine right of kings, and that God was endowing the kings with the power to be able to regulate society. And at that time, there were people that enjoyed freedom, not everyone, there were some, but the freedom was the courtesy of the state. It was not yours as a matter of inalienable right. And so what a king could giveth, a king could taketh. And our founding fathers rejected that. They said that is not the way it goes. These are not government's rights to give. These are God has already spoken on those rights. The role of government is to protect the rights that we already possess as free people. And so you enacted it, you sign a Declaration of Independence, you fight a war, You have an Articles of Confederation that didn't really work the way the founders wanted, and so they met in Philadelphia in 1787 to design a new constitution, and the odds were against them. One of the things they did, these were very smart guys. I mean, the reason why I want people to study these people is because we were fortunate to have a very, very strong, very virtuous leadership class at the time. Could you imagine if, like, they had to do a constitution now and you had people like Pelosi that had to be involved in it? I mean, it would crash, right? So the delegates, like when you had people like James Madison show up in Philadelphia in 1777, they studied the history of every republic in the history of mankind. And the one thing, and you know, there were different permutations going back to ancient Rome and Greece, all these things. They noticed that all those republics, if you studied them in depth, there was really only one thing that they all had in common, and it was this: every one of them had failed. And so they understood it fell to the United States of America to determine once and for all, can you really have a society based on the consent of the governed? Can we really have a society in which we, the people, ultimately control our own destiny based on the rule of law, not the rule of the whims of individual men? Could you actually do that? Could that succeed? Or was mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they really believed, and I think they're right, that the American experiment was ultimately going to answer that question. Because if it couldn't succeed in America, there was really no hope for mankind. And so when we say the United States is the last best hope on earth, that's what we mean. They were fighting against the tide of history. They were fighting against the currents. They were fighting to, in many ways, restrain the problematic impulses of human nature as flawed beings. The founders understood that people, unfortunately, are prone to do things that are destructive. And so they had to harmonize all this stuff, all this history where no one got it right, trying to figure out how you could have a government that was powerful enough to keep order and do things like regulate commerce amongst the states, defend the country, but would not trample on the rights of states, would not trample on the rights of individuals. And what they were able to produce was the best attempt at ever doing that in all of human history. I think it's important that our students understand what went into that. This wasn't just something that they drew on the back of a napkin somewhere at some bar. I mean, this was something that centuries went into this. And if people study this, I'm convinced, having done it myself when I was younger, and I asked, why does the left not want people to study this as much? And I think it's because when people study this, when they read what the founders did, when they follow these debates that they had, whether it's in Philadelphia or other places, the ratification, the Bill of Rights debates, all these things that happen, these ideas are powerful. These ideas are infectious, and people are going to want to see their country live up to those ideals. And the left knows what they're trying to do is not consistent with those ideals, that it would not be what the founders thought was a good, virtuous republic. And so we have to do this as a people. I know you, as homeschool parents, care very deeply about preparing your kids to be citizens of this great land. I know as governor, I think it's essential that our students are able to graduate with a working knowledge of American civics and American history. And if we don't have that, you know, this stuff is just going to continue to fray, and ultimately we're not going to be successful as a people. So you're playing a vital role, not just in what you're doing for your family, but I really believe in the preservation of American liberty in this great republic. So you have a lot of power to shape this in a positive direction. Final thing I'll say, you know, we also have power. You know, you look at like Washington, all this stuff. We have power as people to hold Congress accountable, to change the trajectory of how they behave. I'm involved in two things right now amongst the states to propose amendments to the federal Constitution under Article 5, which you're allowed to do. Congress can propose, the states can propose. 3/4 of the states have to ratify either way. But I believe we're never going to get the country back on track unless we change the behavior of the people that are in Congress. And to do that, you need term limits for members of Congress. And you need a balanced budget requirement for the federal Constitution. So, and don't tell me it can't be done. In Florida, we have term limits for our state legislators. I'm telling you, people can say there's things that aren't as good, and there's always pluses and minuses, but we are much better off having term limits, even when we have folks that aren't doing a good job. I'd rather have that than have entrenched politicians in there for 20 or 30 years. I would not have been able to get done all that we've gotten done. I mean, think about what we've done. You know, we banned sanctuary cities. We're requiring state and locals to help the feds with immigration enforcement, the deportations. We did the anti-woke, we banned DEI, first state in the country to do it. On and on it goes. You look at all the stuff we've done. I can sit here for a long time and do it. I don't think we would have been able to get that done if we didn't have term limits. So I think Florida shows that's good. In the last 6 years, we've been more productive than any state in modern American history, and we're proud of that. But also look at the financial. So when I became governor, we had, if you look when I became governor till today, all the debt in the history of Florida, 180 years, we've paid off 41% of it just in my tenure. And so that's running surpluses and then paying off debt that was incurred in previous years. We've run big budget surpluses. We've almost quadrupled the state's rainy day fund, and we're spending less today in this current year than we did in the previous year. So you have a budget that's actually reduced spending. We have the second lowest per capita spending of any state in the United States, and we have the lowest number of state government workers per capita of any state in the United States. And so I tell people, Florida was Doge before Doge was cool. I just wish the Congress would listen to Elon and actually implement those Doge reductions. That's what we need. So we've done all that, and yet, over that period of time, we've done billions and billions of dollars of tax relief for Floridians, and that's spanned a bunch of stuff. We now, under my tenure, have enacted permanent tax-free for baby items. And so diapers, wipes, you don't pay any sales tax on that, which is really important. Now, I didn't end up getting the legislature to do this until after our youngest was out of diapers. And my wife reminds me, we could have saved a lot of money with that one, but that's fine. We didn't have Bidenflation when I first became governor either, so there's a lot. So we did that. We did the toll relief, which is big in Central Florida, and we 50% reduction in tolls for our commuters 2 years in a row. We've done law enforcement bonuses. We've done a lot, and we'll continue to do more. So the tax relief. But then we've also done really big things that benefit Floridians. You know, our school choice program is a big investment financially because it's $8,000 plus whatever it is per person, and that's a big deal. Obviously, it's beneficial for homeschool, it's beneficial for private education, but that's a big commitment. But we met it, and we're doing more on education financially than we've ever done in the history of the state, including increases for teacher salaries. We're also doing more than we've ever done for law and order and law enforcement, including $5,000 bonuses for all new recruits. Why would you want to be working in Seattle when they treat you poorly? You can come to Florida, you'll be treated well, and you get $5,000 to start. A lot of people like that, so they do it. We're also doing things to protect Florida and conserve Florida's natural environment, like Everglades restoration, springs all these great things that are really, really significant, and people didn't really want to take it on in a big way until I came, and we're doing it. We've also done things with transportation and infrastructure. So those of you who do I-4, we just opened these temporary expansion lanes 8 months early. Honestly, it's made a difference. And we're going to do that whole I-4 project, all these things. We had billions and billions of dollars, and we accelerated it because I don't want to start these. They were scheduled to start 10, 15 years into the future. We're going to deliver projects now 5, 10, 15 years ahead of schedule. So we're doing big things, but we're doing it in a fiscally responsible way that protects taxpayers, that holds the line on spending, that pays down debt, that adds to the rainy day fund, and doing it. So don't tell me it can't be done. But if the path of least resistance politically is to charge it on the credit card, that's what politicians are going to do. And so you have to have a requirement that they actually have to make tough decisions. We had to make tough decisions in Florida when COVID hit. Everyone said, oh, no one's going to go to Florida and they're not going to have a budget. That was like the opposite of what happened. Everybody came to Florida because we were open during COVID and many of these other places were not. So it can be done, and I've been working with other states. Florida's already certified both of these. Other states are coming on, but don't act like, if someone in Washington, the Congress, if they're not doing what you think they should do, don't act like you're powerless. We, the people in the states, have the ability to do really significant reforms through constitutional amendment. And I think that needs to happen, and I think that'll be a big, big plus for the country as a whole. So I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. I think that as important as the education is, I think it's a broader issue that you're supporting of vindicating parental rights and making sure that the students that are growing up in Florida, the kids that are growing up in Florida, yes, prepare them to go to college or to go to a job or all that, but no matter what pathway you take, you will be called upon to be citizens of this republic. And we need to make sure that when they're doing that, they're not just some blank slate with no foundation, that they actually have a good understanding of what it means to be an American. Because when you're here as an American citizen, you've effectively won life's lottery, and I would not want to have my kids growing up in any other country or in any other state in this union. Thank you, God bless you, and keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you so much to Governor DeSantis. He is a hero in my eyes for another reason besides the fact that he's an amazing governor. That is because he is a man who believes in strong families, and he epitomizes that in his own family. He has a beautiful family. And Aubrey and Jen are here to sing to us this morning, and they are the same. They love families. They love strong families. They have a beautiful family themselves. And please help me welcome Aubrey and Jen.
When all I see is the bad, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds